Hi there, Shazwan here. Seems like the Tokyo Olympics are just about done. So let's discuss the winners and losers of the games. And of course, this is a finance channel, so I'm talking about money. We're going to see who profits and loses from all this. And that is if there's any profit at all. Stay tuned. The idea that I got for this video began with my dad. Of course, every time the Olympics comes, he will say, the Olympics don't even make money. No poor country should host the Olympics because they don't make money. And I thought, yeah, man, it makes sense, I guess. It would cost a lot to build the stadiums, the infrastructure needed for the Olympics. But then I saw some articles and videos that say that even rich countries are losing money from the Olympics, and I wanted to find out if it's true. So I did some research, and ta-da! And this is what I got. I've put the references in the description. Maybe it will help you out. I actually read a lot more articles and videos, but I think the ones below are the most relevant for you, so it will help you a lot. So, let me just explain. Who are the winners and losers of this year's Tokyo Olympics? Okay, first, let's look at the hosts. You should notice that the average cost to host the Olympics is $12 billion. I don't care if you can see it or not, if it's small to you, because I should have wrote this all in a script, but I'm too lazy, so I'm just gonna write it in my whiteboard and let it be a script, and at the same time a visual feature that you can read too, if you can read at all. So basically, I found out that the average cost of the 5 previous Olympic Games was $12 billion. The Tokyo Olympics cost $15.4 billion to do the Olympics for Tokyo. This includes costs for infrastructure, costs of bidding for the Olympics, costs of maintenance and such. There are a lot of costs involved. And you should know that before you can even host the Olympics, you have to bid for the right to host. You have to bid with the IOC. You have to bid with the IOC, the International Olympics Committee. So they lost the bid for the 2016 Olympics to Brazil, to Rio. Even though they lost the bid, they still had to pay $150 million, something like that, around that number. So basically, cities and countries bid millions to host the Olympics every 4 years. Cities and countries bid to host the Olympics. It's not like, hey, I want to host the Olympics this year. Oh, okay, I want to host it next year. Oh, sure. No. It's a bid. These countries and cities bid to have the right to host. And for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, well, this year is 2021, but it's still recognized as 2020, I guess. The bid was $75 million. Oh yeah, also, just for your reference, $1 is about 4 ringgit. Moving on. So they bid $75 million to host the Tokyo Olympics, and then they spent $15.4 billion to host it. Just to host it. And a lot of that is just taxpayer money, the Japanese citizens' taxpayer money. So clearly, Tokyo, or Japan in this case, is clearly not making money from this. They're losing money because the cost of building this was $15.4 billion. The revenue they're making right now is around $2 billion, if I'm not mistaken. It could increase over time, but it's still not determined yet. Maybe we'll do a follow-up video for that to see how much they actually made for the Olympics this year. But we'll just take a look at the previous hosts of the Olympics. So for example, London, they spent $18 billion to host the Olympics. $4.4 billion were from taxpayer money. They only made from the Olympics that they spent $18 billion on. They made only $5.2 billion from the London Olympics. Beijing, they spent $40 billion to host the Olympics. They only made from the Olympics $3.6 billion. That includes ticket sales, that includes transportation, airlines and such, taxis, buses, that includes accommodation, hotels. This is all that they made. $3.6 billion. and they spent $40 billion. It's such a joke. Montreal, it took them 30 years to pay off the debt for hosting the 1976 Olympic Games. That's right, 1976. Only by 2006 were they finally able to pay off the debt for hosting the Montreal Olympic Games. So clearly, the host is the loser. Now let's look at the athletes. An average of out of 500 athletes surveyed, only 40% of them said they were financially well. Which means 60% of them were suffering, were financially unstable. What? How is this possible? I mean, they're representing the country. They should make a lot of money, right? And now let's see the facts. Okay, athletes make money from first stipends. Stipends are basically money from associations or maybe nations paying their athletes to do the sport for the training and such. Stipends could be around, some athletes get $1,000 per month, others get just $200 per month. There are even athletes who get $100 per month. So that's the situation. They make so little money from stipends. Okay. Second way they can make money is from sponsors. So sponsors like Nike, Adidas, or Gatorade and such. But the thing about sponsors is they're rarely fair, because just like stipends they give more money to athletes who perform better or are in more popular sports. That's the same with sponsors. Sponsors pay more for athletes in more popular sports or athletes who are world champions compared to just normal athletes who participated in the Olympics but are not that recognized. So sponsorships, athletes could get millions, but there are even athletes who just get like a few hundred to a few $1,000s from a sponsorship. And then the third way athletes can make money is from prizes. So for example, Singapore pays their athletes, whoever gets a gold medal, they can get $1 million Singapore dollars. The US, if I'm not mistaken, $100,000 per gold medal. And then a lot of countries have like these kinds of things because they won gold medals, so the countries give them a money reward for winning the Olympics. For my country, Malaysia, for example, we give out pensions to Olympic medal winners, but those are only for the winners. So only gold, silver, and bronze. So whoever doesn't get a medal doesn't get any money. And here's the interesting part. The athletes for the Olympics, most countries do not pay athletes who join the Olympics. Even the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, don't pay athletes to join the Olympics. So most of them are joining the Olympics with their own money. Most of the time, governments are not paying for their training, paying for their expenses and such. And here's the interesting part. The average training cost for an Olympic athlete is $15,000. The average income for an Olympic athlete is also $15,000. So the average income they make from doing the sport, for training in the sport, is being used to just pay for the training, which includes gym memberships, coaching, massages, therapy and such. So how are they surviving? How are they paying rent? How are they eating food? A lot of questions here. So apparently a lot of athletes work to cover their living expenses because their income from being athletes are paying just for the training and no more. So for them to survive, to live on, they have to work sometimes 2 to 3 jobs. There's even a guy, an American athlete, he says he turned down a job from JP Morgan, which is a huge bank, just because it was a full-time job and he needed part-time job so he can train as an athlete at the same time making money for him to survive. So he had to only work part-time jobs. So he had to work 2 to 3 jobs, pushing away the great job that is JP Morgan, what JP Morgan offered him, and then still train as an athlete to represent his country. Like, he should be paid to do this because he's representing the country, but he's not. He's paying it out of pocket. That's why there are even athletes who ask for donations. They're asking for donations like on Patreon or such, just so they could compete in the Olympics. So the athletes, majority of them, 60% of them, are not financially well. So the athletes are also, unless the athletes are popular or are the champions of gold, silver, or bronze, they're most likely are losers too. So L for the host, L for the athletes. So hosts are losers, athletes, most of them are losers. Okay, now let's look at the IOC. The IOC, they make money from the bids. Yeah, I told you the hosts pay a bid to get the right to host the Olympics. So they get, and the bid money goes to them, the IOC. So they get the bids. They also get the sponsorships from companies to advertise during the Olympics, like maybe Coca-Cola, Nike, and such. So clearly, they're the winners because no way can they lose money. They're not spending anything. They're just getting money so that people can use their name, the Olympics, to play the games. But here's an interesting fact. The average income for the IOC every time the Olympics comes in is $3.5 billion. But for the Tokyo Olympics, they made $623.8 million. That's such a huge change. That's such a huge drop. Even they're still winning, they're still making money. It's just that not as much money as before. And because more and more host countries, host nations, host cities are seeing that the Olympics are making them worse off financially, then instead of helping their economy and such, they are now worried that no one wants to host the 2032 Olympics. So, a win for the IOC, but not a huge win, apparently. So a lot of losers, only one winner, maybe also some little winners like the construction people who helped build the stadiums, or the security companies who helped safeguard, helped protect the Olympics, but not that much. No one mainly involved with the Olympics is winning. Usually it's just the construction people and the security people. I guess those are it. Maybe a few more, but I'm not sure because hotels are not making money because it's COVID time. Airlines are not making money because again COVID time. No one is going to Tokyo to watch the Olympics live, so there's no ticket sales. Because there are no ticket sales, they are expected to lose $800+ million because they can't sell tickets. So it's a lot of losers. There are a lot of losers too, even for the small time people, other than the construction people and the security people. So in the end, is hosting the Olympics worth it? I don't think so. And more countries are starting to realize that too. I think in the future, only major countries, big countries who have hosted the Olympics before, who still have the infrastructure, will host the Olympics, but no other country other than those would want to host the Olympics anymore because it's such a huge burden on the nation, the citizens, the athletes. Even the Rio Olympics were really tough on the people of Brazil. The Athens Olympics were really tough for the people of Greece, to the point that some thought that it was a cause of Greece's bankruptcy. I don't know. Based on this, I just don't think the Olympics are worth it. Don't mean to be a downer, but that's just my opinion. So, did you enjoy the Olympics? At least, after all, we don't want their losses to be in vain. I think COVID surely changed the Olympics. So, I think the next Olympics will be interesting. Well, that's my take. Thanks for your time. Oh yeah, please watch my previous video about space tourism. It's right here, or here, maybe somewhere here. But please watch it and enjoy. Thank you. Also, almost forgot. Like the video for me, please, it helps out a lot, especially with the YouTube algorithm, promoting this video to more people who enjoyed it, like you, and as appreciation for me making this video. Please, and thank you.